Did you know a child is 4 times more vulnerable to gaslighting than a grown adult? 4 times. The psychologists have their reasons: developing brains, lack of experience, the usual clinical jargon. I have a simpler explanation. A child's mind is an unsecured crime scene. Their sense of reality is still being built, the yellow tape isn't up yet, and the evidence is easily contaminated. We spend so much time teaching them about stranger danger, about the obvious threats, that we forget the most dangerous people in their lives will be the ones who smile at them, the ones they're supposed to trust. The playground bully, the best friend with a cruel streak, the frustrated teacher, even a well-meaning relative who thinks they know best. Let me tell you about a con man I put away years ago. Name was Silas. He never raised his voice, never laid a hand on his victims. His weapon was suggestion. He'd take a perfectly confident, successful person and, over the course of a few months, convince them they were forgetful, incompetent, and utterly dependent on him. He'd move their keys and tell them they were losing their mind. He'd change details of a shared memory and express pity for their poor recollection. He isolated them from their friends by whispering little poisons in everyone's ear. It was a masterclass in psychological demolition. Now, you tell me, what is the real difference between Silas in a 3-piece suit and a 10-year-old on the playground telling your son, "That never happened, you're just making it up to get attention"? The scale is different. The motive is cruder. But the playbook is identical. It's about seizing control of someone else's reality. It's the oldest and most effective weapon in the human arsenal. The practical application here isn't to wrap your kid in bubble wrap. It is to recognize that manipulation isn't some high-level dark art. It is baked into human interaction. We teach kids how to look both ways before crossing the street because we know a car can hurt them. It's time we teach them how to look both ways before they trust a narrative that makes them feel small, crazy, or wrong. The first step is for you to understand the game. You have to see the tactics for what they are: a play for power. So, let me ask you, have you ever dismissed your child's complaint about another kid as just playground drama? Have you ever told them they were being too sensitive when they felt hurt by someone's words? We all have. We do it because it's easier. But every time we do, we might just be smudging the fingerprints of a manipulator at work. We're telling our kids that the evidence of their own feelings isn't admissible. And that's a mistake that leaves the door wide open for the next predator to walk right in. The interrogation room in the playground. I've spent more hours than I can count in small windowless rooms with men who lie for a living. And I can tell you that the core of any successful interrogation or manipulation is the same. You have to make the subject S-world small. You isolate them, you become their sole source of information, and you relentlessly attack their version of reality until yours is the only one left standing. This is precisely the tactic at play when your child is being manipulated. The playground, the classroom, even the family dinner table can become an interrogation room. The goal of the manipulator, whether it's a criminal suspect or a charismatic peer, is to break the target's confidence in their own mind. I remember a fraud case, a young teller named Marco. Smart kid, but eager to please. His manager, a real piece of work, was skimming from the vault. For months, he laid the groundwork. He'd compliment Marco effusively, then create tiny, unsolvable problems and blame them on Marco's carelessness. He'd change deposit slip totals by a few dollars and then express disappointment when Marco's drawer came up short. He'd praise him in public and then, in private, say things like, "Are you feeling okay, Marco? You seem a little overwhelmed lately. Don't worry, I've got your back." He made the kid feel indebted and incompetent at the same time. By the time the auditors were called, Marco was so convinced of his own ineptitude that he almost confessed to a crime he didn't commit. His reality had been replaced by the one his manager had manufactured for him. Now, picture your daughter and her best friend, who constantly points out her flaws under the guise of just being honest. Or the soccer coach who tells your son, "You're not really hurt, just shake it off," when he's clearly in pain. They're shrinking the child's world. They are teaching them that their own perceptions, their own feelings, their own pain are unreliable. This is the groundwork. This is how they soften the target. The practical exercise here is to start reframing these interactions. Don't see it as kids being kids. See it for the tactical maneuver it is. The next time your child comes home with a story about a friend who made them feel bad, then told them it was just a joke, don't just soothe their feelings. Sit down and dissect the tactic. Say, okay, so first they made you feel small, and then they tried to invalidate that feeling by calling it a joke. Why do you think they did that? This isn't about creating suspicion. It's about building awareness. It's about giving your child the schematics to the trap before they walk into it. Have you ever noticed how a manipulative person often positions themselves as the victim when called out? They'll say, "I can't believe you'd think I'd try to hurt you." This is a classic misdirection, a defensive maneuver designed to make you feel guilty for questioning them. It works on adults, and it works like a charm on kids. Teach them to spot it. Building your child's internal affairs division. In every police department, you have an internal affairs division. Their job is to investigate the investigators. They don't take anything at face value. They check the facts, they question the narrative, they ensure the integrity of the operation. Your job as a parent is to help your child build their own IAD, an internal department for reality checking. This isn't about teaching them to be cynical, it's about teaching them to be good detectives of their own lives. And that training has to be tailored to their age. You wouldn't give a rookie a homicide case on day 1. For the little ones, say ages 5 to 7, it's all about evidence. Their world is very concrete. When they come to you with a confusing story, you become their partner in forensics. A friend at school says, "You promised you'd give me your cookie, remember?" Your child is flustered, they don't remember. Don't just say, "Don't worry about it." Turn it into a case. Ask, "Okay, detective, let's look at the evidence. What do you remember? Did we pack a cookie today? Let's check your lunchbox." You are teaching them a foundational skill. Their memory and direct experience are valid pieces of evidence. You are arming them against the most basic form of gaslighting, which is simply, "That's not what happened." For the next bracket, ages 8 to 12, they can handle more complex ideas. This is when you introduce the concept of cross-referencing sources and identifying motive. The social dynamics are more complicated. A friend might be excluding them from a group, then claiming it was an accident. Here, you teach them to be an intelligence analyst. Okay, so Sarah said she forgot to invite you. That's her testimony. What are the other facts? Did anyone else know about the party? Did she talk about it in front of you? What might her motive be for not telling you the truth? You're not telling them Sarah is a bad person. You're teaching them to analyze a situation, weigh the evidence, and consider that other people have agendas. You're upgrading their IAD from forensics to analysis. Then you get to the teenagers, 13 to 17. They're not just dealing with playground politics, they're dealing with sophisticated social maneuvering, romantic relationships, and online personas. Here, their internal affairs division needs a psychological profiler. They need to understand intent and patterns of behavior. A partner who constantly checks their phone and then says, "I'm just worried about you because I love you so much," isn't being loving, they're being controlling. The lesson here is about recognizing patterns. 1 incident is an anomaly. 2 is a coincidence. 3 is a pattern of behavior. I worked a stalking case once where the subject, a charismatic ex-boyfriend, had convinced the victim that his constant, unannounced visits were just romantic spontaneity. It wasn't until we sat down and listed every single coincidence that she saw the pattern for what it was: a campaign of intimidation. Teach your teen to be the one who logs the evidence. Has he done this before? What happened last time? What's the common denominator in all these situations? Have you ever thought about how you react when your child questions the authority of an adult, a teacher, or a coach? Do you instinctively side with the adult? Be careful with that reflex. Sometimes your child's investigation is right, and the person in charge is the one who needs to be questioned. Surveillance 101. Spotting the warning signs. In an investigation, you don't wait for a confession. You look for the tells, the breaks in routine, the subtle signals that tell you something is wrong long before the suspect knows you're onto them. You, as a parent, are in a 24/7 surveillance position. Your job is to monitor the feed, not for punishment, but for protection. Spotting manipulation isn't always about catching someone in a blatant lie. It's about noticing the atmospheric changes in your child's life. These are the early warning signs, the silent alarms that you need to be tuned into. Let me tell you about a kidnapping case I consulted on. The girl who was taken wasn't snatched off the street by a stranger. She was groomed for weeks by a man who posed as a talent scout. The parents missed all the signs. Why? Because they were looking for overt danger. They weren't looking for the small stuff. Her grades started slipping slightly. She stopped talking about her usual friends and started mentioning this new, amazing person. She became secretive about her phone. She started dressing differently. Each one of these on its own is just teenage behavior. But together, it was a pattern. It was a footprint. The manipulator was isolating her and slowly replacing her world with his. By the time he made his move, he had already convinced her that he was the only one who truly understood her. The parents weren't looking for a manipulator, they were looking for a monster, and they missed him. So, what are the tells in your child? It often starts with them doubting themselves. You'll hear phrases like, "Maybe I am too sensitive," or "I'm probably just remembering it wrong." This is a huge red flag. It means someone has been actively working to undermine their confidence in their own perceptions. Another sign is increased anxiety or secrecy around a specific person or group. If your normally talkative kid clams up whenever you ask about a certain friend or a particular class, that's not just privacy. That's a wall. Something is happening there that they feel they can't talk about. You might also see them constantly apologizing, even for things that aren't their fault. This is a classic symptom of being in a relationship with a manipulator, who will twist every situation to make the victim feel like they are the one to blame. The practical step here is to create a baseline. Know your kid. Know their normal moods, their friends, their habits, the way a good detective knows every inch of his beat. Then, when something deviates from that baseline, you investigate. You don't have to come in with sirens blazing. You just start asking quiet questions. I've noticed you haven't talked about Jessica lately. Is everything okay there? Or you seem a little on edge after practice. How's it going with the new coach? The goal is to open a door, to let them know you're seeing something, and that it's safe to talk about it. When you were a kid, who did you hide things from the most? Was it because you feared punishment, or because you feared they wouldn't understand? Your ability to detect these signs is directly proportional to how safe your child feels reporting them to you. The Empowerment Framework. Turning your kid into their own best detective. The psychologists love their fancy terms. Empowerment Framework. It sounds nice, but it's vague. I call it something different. I call it deputizing your kid. You're not just the detective in their life, you're the seasoned veteran training the rookie. The goal isn't for you to solve all their cases. The goal is to train them to be so good that they become their own lead investigator. This isn't about giving them a list of rules. It's about teaching them a way of thinking. It's about honing their instincts and giving them the tools to process a scene on their own. Your child's gut feeling is their best confidential informant. It's that nagging voice in the back of their head that says, "Something doesn't feel right here." Too often, we teach kids to ignore that voice in favor of being polite, of not making waves. That is a catastrophic mistake. We need to teach them that their gut feeling is raw intelligence. It's not admissible in court on its own, but it's where every single good investigation starts. When your child says, "I just have a weird feeling about Mr. Johnson," your first response should never be, "Don't be silly, he's a nice man." It should be, "Okay, tell me about that feeling. What did you see? What did you hear?" Let's treat that feeling as a tip-off and see if we can find any evidence to support it. I worked with a woman once, Margaret, who had escaped a dangerous cult. I asked her when she first knew something was wrong. She said it was on her very first visit. The leader said something that felt off, but everyone else was smiling and nodding, so she ignored it. She spent 5 years ignoring that initial gut feeling because she was taught that the group's consensus was more reliable than her own intuition. She paid for that lesson with 5 years of her life. Don't let your kids make the same mistake. The most practical tool you can give them is the investigative debrief. When they come to you after a difficult social interaction, don't just give them a hug and a platitude. Put on your detective hats together. Run the tape back. All right, let's walk through it. What was the first thing that happened? Then, what did she say? What was her tone of voice? What was her goal? What did she want you to do or feel? Now, what did you want in that situation? Where did those two things conflict? This isn't about blame. It's about deconstruction. You are taking the manipulator's tangled web of emotional spaghetti and methodically straightening it out so your child can see the clean lines of the tactic. You're teaching them critical thinking in real time. Do you remember being confused by a social situation as a kid, wishing someone would just explain the hidden rules? That's what you're doing here. You are revealing the mechanics of the machine, and once a kid understands how the trick is done, the magic is gone. The manipulator loses their power. The chain of evidence for emotions parents are told to validate their child's feelings. It's become a mantra. And it's not wrong, but it's incomplete. Just saying, "I hear you," or "that must have been so hard" is like a detective showing up at a crime scene, saying, "Yep, looks like a crime," and leaving. It's insufficient. True validation, the kind that builds resilient, manipulator-proof kids, is about treating their feelings as the first link in a chain of evidence. It's about teaching them that their emotions are clues that need to be followed up on, investigated, and backed up with facts. Imagine your son comes home furious and says, "My teacher hates me. She gave me a C on my project, but she gave Tim an A, and mine was way better." The standard validation script is to say, "Oh, honey, that's so unfair. I'm sure you did a great job. That feels good in the moment, but it teaches him nothing." The detective's approach is different. You start by securing the first piece of evidence. You say, "Okay, piece of evidence number 1. You feel angry and believe you were treated unfairly. That feeling is 100% valid and real. Let's put it in the evidence bag." Now, a good detective doesn't stop at one clue. What's the next piece of evidence? Let's see the project. Let's look at the grading sheet. What were the teacher's comments? What did Tim's project look like? You see the difference? You're not questioning their feeling. You are honoring it as the starting point of an investigation. You're teaching them how to build a case around their emotions. This process does 2 extraordinary things. First, it empowers them. They learn that their feelings aren't just random weather patterns. They are signals pointing toward something tangible. Second, it teaches them to separate emotion from fact, a skill that will serve them for the rest of their lives. Sometimes, after reviewing the evidence, they'll discover their teacher was unfair. Now, you have a solid case to take to the school. Other times, they'll see the teacher's note about how they missed a key requirement. The initial feeling of anger was still valid, but the conclusion was wrong. They learn to self-correct. I once saw a solid gold case fall apart in court because the lead detective got emotionally invested. He was so convinced the suspect was guilty that he started ignoring evidence that pointed in another direction. His feelings contaminated the case. We have to teach our kids not to make the same mistake. Their feelings are the informant, not the judge and jury. So, the next time your child is overwhelmed by an emotion, try this script. Your feeling is the most important clue we have. It tells us we need to open a case. Now, let's go find some more evidence. Have you ever made a decision based purely on emotion that you later regretted? You were acting on that first clue without building the rest of the case. We can teach our kids to be better investigators than we were. Digital shadows. Protecting kids from online interrogators. The interrogation rooms I used to work in were physical spaces. They had 4 walls, a table, and 2 chairs. The dynamic was clear. Today, the most dangerous interrogation rooms have no walls. They exist in the digital space, on social media, in chat rooms, and in multiplayer games. And the interrogators are anonymous, relentless, and they have an audience. Online manipulators are what I call digital interrogators. They use the same classic tactics, isolation, gaslighting, intimidation, but they amplify them with the unique pressures of the online world. The threat of public humiliation via shared screenshot, the ability to create fake profiles to agree with them, the 24/7 nature of the harassment. It's the old playbook on steroids. The biggest mistake parents make is treating online life as if it's not real life. Let me be perfectly clear, the nervous system does not know the difference. The humiliation of being publicly shamed in a group chat is as real as being shamed in the school hallway. The fear is real. The pain is real. The psychological damage is real. I consulted on a particularly nasty cyberbullying case involving a 14-year-old girl. A boy she had rejected created a fake profile using her picture and started posting vicious rumors. But the truly insidious part was how he recruited others. He'd message her friends, "Hey, did you see what she said about you?" Complete fabrications. He turned her entire social circle against her. He isolated her, just like Silas the con man did with his victims. She was trapped in a digital interrogation room where dozens of voices were telling her she was worthless. Your job is to give your kids the tools to navigate this. First, the concept of a digital paper trail. Unlike a fleeting verbal comment in the hall, everything online leaves a trace. Teach them from day one to be their own crime scene technician. Screenshot everything. Every threatening message, every cruel comment, every profile that seems suspicious. This is evidence. It is non-negotiable. It may be the only thing that protects them later. Second, teach them the tactic of strategic disengagement. An online interrogator feeds on reaction. They want the tears, the anger, the defensive replies. Teach your child that the most powerful response is often no response. Block, report, and walk away. It denies the manipulator their victory. A practical habit to build is the phone-down debrief. At the end of the day, have a designated time where you both put your phones down, and you ask a simple question. Anything weird happen online today? Not. Were you bullied? That's too direct. Anything weird is an open door. It allows them to bring up the small things, a strange friend request, an odd comment, that can often be the first sign of a larger problem. Have you ever scrolled through your own social media feed and felt worse afterward? You've experienced a mild form of this. Now imagine that feeling being targeted directly at you, by your peers, when your entire social world lives on that screen. This isn't a tech problem, it's a human behavior problem happening on a new platform. And the old rules of manipulation still apply. The long game. Resilience as the ultimate countermeasure. We've talked about tactics, evidence, and interrogation. But this isn't about winning a single case. This is about the long game. The ultimate goal isn't to create a child who is paranoid, who sees a potential suspect in every friend. The goal is to cultivate a deep, unshakable resilience. Resilience is the ability to get knocked down by a manipulator, to have your reality questioned, and to be able to stand back up, dust yourself off, and say, "Nice try, but I'm the lead detective in my own life, and your story doesn't check out." That is the ultimate countermeasure. I knew a detective, an old-timer named Frank. He was legendary. He'd walk into an interrogation with a stone-cold killer, and he'd never raise his voice. He'd just listen. The suspect would lie, brag, threaten, try to get under his skin, and Frank would just sit there, absorbing it all, his belief in the facts of the case unshaken. He had a core of certainty that no amount of manipulation could touch. That's resilience. It's not about being aggressive. It's about being anchored. It's an internal locus of control, as the shrinks would say. It's knowing that you are the ultimate arbiter of your own experience. How do you build that in a child? You do it by letting them experience and recover from small failures. You do it by not rushing in to solve every problem for them. When they have a disagreement with a friend, you can debrief the situation with them. But then you ask, "So, what's your next move, detective?" You let them handle the follow-up. You let them feel the satisfaction of resolving a situation themselves, or the sting of it not working out, and you help them analyze the aftermath. Resilience is a muscle, and it only gets stronger through exercise. A parent who smooths over every single bump in the road is, with the best of intentions, creating a child with atrophied psychological muscles, making them a prime target for manipulators later in life. The most important thing I can leave you with is this. Your relationship with your child is the safe house where they come to analyze the evidence. It has to be a place of absolute trust. They need to know that they can bring you their messiest, most confusing cases. The times they messed up, the times they were tricked, the times they were cruel themselves, and that you will look at the evidence with them without immediate judgment. Your job is not to be their judge. Your job is to be their seasoned partner, the one who has seen it all and can help them make sense of the chaos. The world is full of people who will try to write your child's story for them. Your job is to give them the pen and the training to write it themselves, and to make sure they know with absolute certainty that they are the sole author.